Take a moment to arrive here. You're safe, you're settled, and there's nowhere else you need to be. Tonight's story takes place in a quiet, familiar space, somewhere gentle, unhurried, and completely at ease. You don't need to listen closely. You don't need to remember anything. Nothing in this story requires your attention. You can let the sound stay softly in the background, or drift in and out, as you like. If your thoughts are still moving, that's perfectly all right. They can slow down on their own. This is simply a calm voice, keeping you company as the night settles in. The cottage rested quietly at the edge of the forest, as if it had always been there, waiting for nights like this. The air was cool and damp, carrying the faint smell of pine and earth softened by recent rain. I paused at the threshold, letting my eyes adjust to the dim interior, where fading light from the windows pooled softly across wooden floors. Outside, the leaves rustled gently, stirred by a patient wind. I felt the hush of evening pressing softly against my senses. Inside, the fire in the hearth had long since ebbed into embers, leaving only warmth in the stones and the faint scent of smoke that lingered like memory. I knelt and stirred the coals, coaxing a small glow back into life. Shadows began to stretch across the walls, dancing slowly, subtly, in rhythm with the soft flicker of light. The room smelled faintly of wood and lavender, of books that had absorbed years of quiet afternoons, and of blankets waiting to be wrapped around tired shoulders. I moved to the small kitchen, pouring water into the kettle. The flame beneath hissed softly as it caught, almost like a slow heartbeat in the otherwise still room. Outside, the rain began again, soft and steady, tapping against the roof tiles and drumming on the leaves. I watched the droplets slide along the glass, twisting and stretching, reflecting the muted light of the room as though the world itself were taking a deep, unhurried breath. I settled into a chair near the hearth, pulling a woolen blanket around my shoulders. The fabric was heavy but comforting, infused with the faint scent of flowers pressed long ago. A reminder that time could move slowly and kindly. I leaned back, letting the warmth seep into my spine, listening to the fire's quiet pop and hiss. Each ember glowed and faded in its own rhythm, and I followed it with my eyes, tracing a delicate, endless dance. The kettle whistled softly, and I poured water over tea leaves, watching the steam curl upward in gentle spirals. I inhaled the warmth, tasting the faint bitterness as it rolled across my tongue and settled in my chest. Outside, the rain softened to a whisper, droplets racing along the roof in tiny streams, merging, diverging, moving with the patient curiosity of water in motion. I rested my hands over the warm cup, feeling the heat seep into my skin, and let my thoughts drift like the mist outside. I walked slowly to the window, tracing the path of a single droplet as it meandered down the pane. Beyond, the garden was softened into shadow and blur, trees and shrubs indistinct in the gentle curtain of rain. A lantern hung by the porch, its light dim and forgiving, marking the threshold between the indoors and the vast, quiet night. I lingered there, letting my gaze wander slowly, catching on small, ordinary details. A curled leaf, the shine of wet bark, the glimmer of water pooling in the earth. Returning to the fire, I pulled a book from the shelf, one whose pages were soft and familiar. I traced the cover with my fingers before opening it, appreciating its texture, its weight, the faint imprint of hands that had touched it before mine. When I read, I did not chase narrative. Instead, I allowed the words to settle gently, to wash over me in slow waves. I repeated phrases in my mind, savoring the rhythm and cadence of language, letting the sentences stretch, unfold, and fade softly into the warmth around me. Time stretched and folded in quiet layers. I refilled my tea, letting its warmth pour over my palms, and listened to the muted patter of rain, the subtle creak of wood as the cottage settled, the soft murmur of wind brushing the forest. Each sound was distinct, yet part of the same gentle flow. I allowed myself to notice it all without judgment, without expectation, simply acknowledging presence and the small, ongoing miracle of calm. I moved through the cottage slowly, pausing at familiar nooks, a chair with a blanket folded neatly, a windowsill lined with jars of dried flowers, shelves of books and trinkets that marked quiet years of human presence. Each space felt alive with subtle memory. I pressed my hand lightly on the wood of the table, feeling its smooth grain and the faint warmth from earlier sunlight, allowing my attention to linger on textures, scents, and shapes, observing without needing to act. The fire flickered low, sending gentle shadows across the room. I returned to my chair, settling deeply into its contours, wrapping the blanket more tightly around me. The rhythm of my breath began to align with the slow cadence of the night. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Outside, the rain had become a soft murmur, droplets touching the roof, leaves, and earth in a delicate percussion. I closed my eyes briefly, letting the room fold into a quiet cocoon around me. I thought of small routines I had long forgotten, lighting a candle, stirring tea, pressing fingertips against smooth surfaces, watching drops of rain form and fall. Each act, repeated slowly, became a meditation, a gentle anchor to the present. I revisited these motions in my mind, stretching them across minutes that seemed like hours, savoring the subtle rise and fall of attention, letting observation itself become the rhythm of rest. From the window, I watched a particularly persistent raindrop twist down the pane, merging with others to form tiny rivulets that glimmered in the soft firelight. I followed their slow path, imagining their journey across the roof and garden, a journey unhurried, patient, and deliberate. The kettle whistled again, a reminder of warmth and small care. I poured the tea, inhaling the gentle aroma, holding the cup between my hands. Each sip felt slow, a meditation in taste and sensation. Outside, the trees whispered in the wind, their branches brushing against one another with the soft insistence of a lullaby. I let my body and mind follow that rhythm, bending, swaying, listening, noticing, drifting. I wandered again through the rooms, moving without urgency, touching familiar surfaces, the grain of wood, the softness of fabric, the weight of a book in my hands. I allowed my attention to stretch across the space, lingering on ordinary details. A small crack in the floorboard, the uneven stitching of a cushion, the faint scent of smoke lingering in the stones. Each observation became a slow tether to presence, grounding without demanding focus, drawing me deeper into stillness. The fire dwindled further, embers glowing faintly and fading, leaving shadows that stretched into the corners. I sat back, blanket wrapped tightly, and let the hush of the cottage fill me completely. My breath deepened, exhalations longer, softer. I listened to the small enduring sounds of night, rain over the roof, the wind through the trees, the subtle settling of wood, the faint purr of cats curled near the hearth. I did not chase sleep. I allowed it to come softly, as the world around me unfolded in patient motion. Hours passed without measure. The rain softened to a whisper, the fire reduced to warmth in the stones, the candle extinguished, leaving only the faint memory of light. I felt the pull of rest, the gentle drift of consciousness aligning with the rhythm of warmth, presence, and quiet. Awareness narrowed to the comforting textures, the muted sounds, the soft weight of blanket and chair. I surrendered fully, floating in the gentle current of stillness, unhurried, unforced, and entirely safe. The night continued softly. Shadows deepened, merging, stretching, dissolving into each other. My breath matched the pulse of the room, slow, calm, unbroken. Small movements, a creak of wood, the distant brush of leaves became part of the lull, woven seamlessly into the quiet. Memory, sensation, and imagination intertwined gently, forming a seamless, hypnotic rhythm. And there, in the heart of the cottage, surrounded by warmth, rain, and shadow, I drifted completely. Not awake, not fully asleep, but in that perfect suspended place between the two. The quiet held me. The soft, enduring pulse of the night carried me. And in its gentle embrace, I surrendered to rest, unhurried, unpressured, entirely at peace.